Hey, good afternoon, everybody. So it's a great day today. We have a special opportunity to get together and renew our focus on safety, quality of our products by listening to a real special speaker today. Important enough that we thought, all the management team, that it was important enough to take some time off from work and gather everyone here. So thanks for taking time to come over. I know that some of you had problems coming over here with the railway crossing signal that was kind of going down for 2 minutes, coming back up again. Karen Walker drove me over, and she invented a new word. The thing went down, came back up again, goes, shh, damn. So she looked at me, and so she didn't. So she changed the word mid-sentence, and so the new word is shadam. That's Karen. You can copyright that, shadam. Back on a serious note, and why we're here today, Michael Ciannilli is our guest. Mike is the NASA manager of the Apollo, Challenger, and Columbia Lessons Learned program. You can imagine for an organization like NASA and so many of the tragedies that have happened in our evolution of spaceflight, how important it is to track lessons learned and share them. And but as Mike and I were talking behind the stage here, there's a great deal of commonality between our job every day and the job of the people at NASA. We have to build products that are quality products that can be depended upon, that people are going to use in harm's way. And if they don't work, something bad happens, right? So we know that we take with us a certain special cause and special sense of purpose in our job every day. We take our job very seriously, just like our colleagues at NASA do. So it's appropriate that being here from the Space Coast all together, that we share some lessons learned and try to help one another. Prior to his current role, Mike Ciannilli was the lead of the Columbia Research and Preservation Office. Then he also, before that, he led the creation and development of the Forever Remembered project for Columbia and Challenger at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. Previously, he served for 9 years as the NASA test director for the Space Shuttle program at Kennedy. He's got a wide range of other positions he's filled at NASA. Before joining NASA in 2005, Mike was a contractor with the United Space Alliance, where he worked for 8 years as a test project engineer, leading the testing and engineering integration during the processing of shuttles and launch operations. Before that, he was the lead for the launch countdown simulation team. Pretty cool jobs. He's received numerous awards throughout his career. I won't list them all, but one I will list, some of you may know about it, is the Astronaut's Silver Snoopy Award, which is a special award. It's very coveted and really speaks to appreciation on behalf of the astronauts for the job that Mike does when he's at NASA. Mike Ciannilli has a Bachelor of Science degree in Space Science from Florida Institute of Technology. He grew up in Syracuse, New York. He likes spending time with his family, surfing, swimming, boating, sailing, hiking, skiing, and film production. We're very fortunate to have representative of our own space agency here to talk with us today. Please give a Melbourne welcome for Mike Ciannilli.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Bill. I also want to thank Matt and Kimberly and everyone else that helped me get set up for this event, so thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I have to tell you a really quick story first, though, of how we got here. Kimberly was great and reached out and says, we're going to have you come on down if you would and spend some time with our folks, which I was excited about. But the original plan, which you may not have known about, was going to be in the cafeteria. So I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good gig. There's a lot of food around, so I can grab some food while I'm talking. I like that idea. And then she called back and says, hey, we got a bigger crowd, so we're going to have to move it somewhere else to the Melbourne Auditorium. So then I went on and Googled Melbourne Auditorium because I hadn't been here for an event like this. And then I was looking, I was like, boy, there's musical performances, there's dancers, there's singers, and why am I going there? It was kind of confusing to me. So I can assure you right up front, I will not sing and I will not dance. If anybody's ever seen me do that in public, I'm sorry. And I promise not to do that today, so we'll have a great conversation. Before I also continue, I just want to say I also had the opportunity today to spend some time over to DRS at your facility and walk around and meet some of your folks. To say it's impressive is an understatement. I learned a lot about what you folks do. It's extremely impressive. The processes you have in place, the systems you have, how you integrate data and knowledge across systems and people, that's extremely important. That helps tremendously with cutting down potential for errors and mistakes, not only increasing efficiency, but also the safety factor. So that's extremely impressive. So congratulations on that as well. And one also thing that came forward when I was talking with Bill backstage, as he mentioned, we started talking about what all you do and what you've been through the last several years. And the more we talked, it became more and more apparent that we're a lot alike. It really became true. You know, several years ago, we were flying the space shuttle program, had done it for 30 years. We kind of got our mojo going and our rhythm going, which was great. And all of a sudden, things changed. And the shuttle program came to an end. And with that coming to an end, we lost thousands of our talented folks. A lot of the folks there from the Apollo generation, well, they're gone now. So that corporate knowledge, that tribal knowledge, as we call it, was walking out the door at record pace. So we're losing a lot of that. We went through several years of trying to figure out where we're at and try to refocus on a different mission. Now we fast forward a number of years, and we're in a pretty exciting place in the space program. We find ourselves with a great challenge. 50 years ago, actually this year, in a couple of weeks, President Kennedy told NASA, we want you to go to the moon and get an astronaut back safely. Fast forward 50 years, President Trump just gave us another mandate. We want you to go back to the moon, but you got 5 years to go do it in. We want you to go stay there, learn what you need to learn to go to Mars after that. So that's a pretty big task. So we find ourselves after shuttle in that intermediate time, now faced with a huge challenge, with a huge goal, and not a lot of time to get there, if you will. Plus, in addition to that, with new vehicles and new rockets to do that and craft, we also have a brand new workforce for a large part. We've got thousands of brand new people, a lot of great young talent, a lot of smart folks and energetic folks coming through, but they just don't have the run time. They don't have the time in the seat to get the processing and the launching done and do that. We want to be smart on, we can't make mistakes. I think that's another similarity we talked about. What you folks do, and you know that much better than I do, if you make mistakes, what happens, right? Some kid 6,000 miles away doesn't come home to his family. That's real, right? Well, our customers are the astronauts. If we make a mistake, we lose our crews. And we're going to talk about that today a little bit. Not to mention our crews on the launch vehicle, but we've got thousands of people that support them. And I can tell you from working at Kennedy Space Center for over 20-something years, it is very easy to hurt or kill somebody. We can kill somebody just like that on our very best day, and it's happened before. So we never lose the perspective of how quick a day can turn from good to bad. It's very, very quick. So we're reinvigorating our safety. We're trying to share that message, and that's part of this new program. But before we start officially with what we're going to talk about, I also did a little research on you guys, and I learned something as well. And I think there is a congratulations in order for that. Happy birthday. 50 years, right? And that just goes to, obviously, what you folks do is very, very well. And I can see your business is increasing as well. So anyhow, back to what we're here for. My purpose here today, my job here today, we want to share what we've been through. So some of it's going to be a little tough to talk about because we've lost lives. We're going to be very frank. We don't sugarcoat anything. We were very up and honest about what we did wrong, how we did it wrong, and what we've learned from it. Because if we don't get to that, we're not going to fix it, and we're not going to do better in the future. And we're also going to talk about some of the good stuff that we've done as well, because we got a 60-year history of a lot of good stuff and a few bad things. So we're going to do that as well. So we'll start it off. The program, the Apollo Challenger Columbia Lessons Learned program, really started from the purpose of, when we looked at accidents before, we would take an accident, we'd have usually a presidential commission, we'd investigate the accident, have the folks read the reports, talk about it, and then we went back to ops normal, right? Like we do in life. Something happens in life that challenges you, and then you move on, and things sort of get forgotten. Not because you want to, it's just life does that, right? It's like driving down 95 and you see an accident, right? And after that, we're 10 on 2 on the wheel for the next 5-10 miles. right? The radio goes off, and then after a while, you start loosening the shoulders, one hand comes off the wheel, radio goes back on, maybe start eating a cheeseburger again, and then 20 minutes later, one leg's out the window and you're driving with your toes, right? So it's life, we don't want to do that. So we're trying to reinvigorate that. So we look back at our history. There's just a few of the missions we have good examples of. Every single mission I could show you, we could talk probably a whole day on lessons learned from the mission. But we focus on some of the ones that we lost life or we had more closer calls. Our first introduction to tragedy, if you will, was Apollo 1. So setting the tone back 50 years ago, the president at the time told us, hey, you're going to the moon. Okay? Basically what you're going to do is you're going to take a swamp, and that's what KSE was and pretty much isn't to this extent. You're going to take a swamp and you're going to build the most technologically advanced complex in the world, and you're going to launch people to the moon, which has never been done before. And by the way, you've got to do it by the end of the decade. Okay? So there's a challenge for you, right? You're going to go do this. So there was a lot of pressure to do that. Now fast forward a couple years, the president was assassinated. So now you've got a moral direction. The president said we have to get there. It's a national goal. It's national pride. It's also got defense components and other aspects to it. We have to get there. We cannot fail. So there is a push to get to the moon. Right? So you're going from Mercury. I think we'd flown 15 minutes suborbital when President Kennedy told us to go do that. Suborbital is a lot different than landing on the moon. Right? So it's a big jump. So we're pushing fast and furious through Mercury, through Gemini. Now we're getting up to Apollo. It's 1967. You look at the calendar, that gives you 3 years to get to the moon. And there's a lot of things before you can land on the moon. Okay? So things are pushing hard. Technology is pushing, design is pushing, and everything else. Through that push, things can get missed. Result is, we're a couple weeks before launch. We got our 3 astronauts ready to go. They're sitting in the capsule on top of the rocket at Complex 34 at the Cape, and they're ready doing a dress rehearsal. Okay, so they're running through the dress rehearsal. It's going relatively smooth, although there's some technical issues going on, as you always get when you're doing these types of things. And all of a sudden, a little after 6:30 in the afternoon, all of a sudden reports of fire. Okay, an audio of the crew screaming, there's a fire, there's a fire. Result of that is we lost 3 of our friends. So that's our first taste of an accident. Okay? Our focus had been so strong and so pushing towards the goal. We weren't letting things slip on accident, but things were kind of creeping in. Okay? And that's easy to do when you're under tight pressures for that. And we paid with the ultimate sacrifice. Lots of lessons learned came out of Apollo 1. So the main cause was a fire started. Fire was in the capsule. The crew was inside. The crew couldn't get out. And we lost the crew. Was consumed by a fire on board the vehicle. Once we start peeling back the onion and understanding the accident, a lot of things came forward. When you look at accidents often, it seems pretty simple, right? The accident findings are always easy. I always say that if you want, they always make you feel bad, right? The accident board comes in, they do their thing, and here's your findings. They're usually pretty easy, right? They're usually pretty easy. It doesn't take a lot. It's hard to see them before the accident. That's where the talent comes in, how to find the answers before that. A couple lessons learned. As you can see with the hatch there, I'll bring up a couple points inside the capsule. We're using pure oxygen in the environment. We had to use a pure O2 environment through Mercury and Gemini for lots of different reasons, right? So we're using that, never had a problem, never had a problem. We get to Apollo, we're going to still use pure oxygen. Well, anybody that knows anything about combustibility, pure oxygen in a spark, right? You've got a really rich source of fuel for that fire, okay? Again, it seems simple afterwards, but when you're in the process of doing it, sometimes the obvious is not so obvious. Not to mention, you've got tens of thousands of the brightest and the best around the country coming down to do this program. So it isn't the folks that aren't so smart or the folks that don't care. No, it's the best and the brightest, and usually the ones that care the most. We can still have accidents and problems. So that's one thing we learn. You'll see the hatch there, right? The hatch was redesigned in Mercury for another purpose, right? One of our landings in the ocean, the hatch is questionable what happened with the hatch. Water started filling up the capsule. So the design was, well, we're going to have the capsule open, or the hatch open in a way that you can't have an inadvertent release of the hatch and the capsule couldn't fill up with water and sink to the bottom of the ocean, which basically happened to Gus Grissom. Okay? The problem with this hatch design is that if you want to get out in an emergency, it's not so easy. Okay? You've got an inward opening hatch. It's a lot harder to do that. Okay? Precious seconds were needed in Apollo 1. So when the fire broke out, there was an attempt to open the hatch. Okay, that attempt was unsuccessful. So a design in a different way ended up catching us downstream years later in a different way we didn't even anticipate when we were trying to fix the issue of landing in the water, in the ocean. So designs have qualifications. We also had many other things with Apollo 1. For example, something as innocent as this, right? In our business, the entire volume is important because astronauts float. It's weightlessness, right? So when you're in a capsule, from the early days, the crews would come back and say, hey, here's what we want you to do. Take that really cool stuff called Velcro, and we want to use Velcro in the capsule because when I'm looking for a pen or glasses or a manual, it's going to be floating all over the place. But if I can stick it somewhere nearby, I can hold it there and I can tell where it is. So Velcro is a good thing. Well, every crew would outfit their capsule. They had a lot of input on where they want the Velcro placed and all this stuff. As time goes on, right, Velcro is pretty handy, so more and more Velcro goes into the capsule. Okay? Flight crew folks were working on that, had the configuration of the capsule just the way they wanted. The only problem with Velcro is that that's another source of fuel. Okay? So a seemingly innocent introduction to the vehicle to help the crew and make it safer for the crew to do what they want to do actually helped contribute in a negative way when the fire broke out. So unintended things. So we always try to say, let's look ahead, let's look at the commonality down the road. You may not see it now, but it doesn't mean there's not a commonality down the road for unintended consequences. And again, we lost the crew as a result. Fast forward a number of years, okay, so we land on the moon, everything works. Apollo 11, we get through Apollo 17. That worked out good. We went in the Skylab program, that was great. Went into Apollo Soyuz, went through there, started up the Space Shuttle program, 1981, and we get through the first 24 Space Shuttle flights. I'm not saying there weren't challenges, there certainly were, but we get through successfully 24 flights of the Space Shuttle, and then we get to 1986 in time for Challenger. Okay, and we all know the story there. As the result of Challenger, we lost the Challenger 7 crew. That's our second face-to-face with failure. Okay, and this was our first in-flight accident. Okay, and I can tell you the folks that work out there that still worked on Challenger, they still feel to this day. Okay, a lot of folks feel they let the crew down. We let the team down. When talking to some of the folks this morning, I can see such a parallel between what we do in the space program and what you folks do in the defense industry. Okay, again, our customers, our astronauts, your customers are the folks that are sitting there and fighting and defending us. Okay, I'm sure you feel the same way. When something doesn't go right that you've tested on the bench or worked on or designed, and some kid doesn't come home, you feel that direct connection as well. We don't want to feel that in what we do. Every crew, we shake their hands, we brief them, we say you're going to come home to your family. When they don't, I can tell you personally from briefing the crews, when they don't, you never forget those moments. I want nobody ever to experience that again. And I'm sure you feel the same way when you do your job, getting the folks back home from wherever they are, either here or overseas, doing their job. So Challenger was on the pad. This was, of course, 1986. January 28th, we're going for launch. We've been delayed several days. A lot of inputs. I'm going to say a lot of inputs. And when I say this, I invite you to think of what you do. So this is not just a history lesson of what the space program went through. I want you to think about your guys, right? What pressures, what budgetary, what schedule pressures, what systems, what things do you face in your meetings? It's all about going forward. I always say the ACCLLP program is not a history program. I'm not a history professor. It's a forward, it's a future program. It's how can we affect the future for change. Lots of things happen, right? One of the things we learned was we did bad communication, okay? How you say things and how you word things can have dramatic effects on how people perceive that information. For example, the night before launch, and there's books, lots of books out there you can take a look at in video productions as well. It was a heated debate, should we launch? Right, so in 1986, Columbia had just launched. Columbia was behind schedule before Challenger. We're already starting off behind schedule. The shuttle program was going to be launching every 2 weeks. That was our mission and mandate. Right, that was back in the late 70s and early 80s. We were finding out the most technologically advanced machine in the world, we couldn't do that. It's hard to launch every 2 weeks. This vehicle takes a lot of TLC. It's a very complicated vehicle. So our manifest is also getting tighter. All right? As the manifest gets tighter and tighter, there's more pressure to launch. We've got payloads ready to go. As you may remember back then as well, as we were going to be the one-stop shop. All the expendable launch vehicles that we were launching at the time, and we were phasing those out. The shuttle was going to launch all of the military payloads, all the civilian payloads, all the science payloads, and now start launching commercial payloads. Okay, so everything was going to be on the shuttle. That's a lot of pressure on the system, right? And you're not meeting the manifest. You're not launching every 2 weeks. Payloads are starting to stack up. Pressure starting to increase. Okay, So, night before launch on Challenger, I don't know if you remember 1986 or not, I was actually at FIT at that time as a freshman, and that was one of the coldest winters I can remember in Florida. It was a freezing cold January. I remember taking a scuba diving class. Not a good time to take scuba diving class. It was snowing in Jacksonville, right? So a cold time to go do that. So due to weather concerns with fronts coming through and also technical challenges on the vehicle, it started to slip day by day for launching. That's not good because that's going to push back Atlantis, which is going to be after Challenger. Okay, so again, pressure starts building. Night before, again, we have conversations at the Kennedy Space Center. We have conversations in Houston and conversations over at different vendors. But mostly, everything was over, not at Kennedy, it was more in Marshall. Vendors are talking to management, management's talking to contractors. There's a long story about that, we won't get into it. But comments were made during the meeting, okay? For example, this one here, take off your engineering hat and put on your management hat. Okay, now, I'm not the brightest guy in the world, I'll admit that, but I can pretty much tell you that's not about fashion, right? That's a message implied. So when somebody says that, they know what they meant. I know you're presenting different data and different gray sets of data, but we've got a launch schedule to do. Think about it from that point of view. As I mentioned, January is pretty cold. There's a picture of the launch pad, launch morning. And again, all of us, either from Florida or live in Florida, you don't typically see icicles, right, typically outside. The pad was covered in ice. Okay, right here you can see the back of the vehicle at the launch tower, icicles hanging down. Item on the right is our comm box. That's how we talk to the crew and the closeout crew. We actually plug their headsets into there, and as test directors, they talk to us in the firing room through that comm system. There's no way you can plug in your headset cased in ice. That's off nominal. That's a really off nominal situation, right? So again, sometimes things are telling you maybe you should think twice about things. The night before launch, we were talking about that. We were talking about temperatures. And there was some data to suggest that temperatures were not going to be good for the solid rocket boosters, that the O-rings and the elasticity of the O-rings was not going to function properly. Not super hard sets of data, but there was data. We didn't have experience in flight rationale in this region, so we started extrapolating, okay? Comments were also made at that time, when do you want us to launch, next April? Okay, again, that's not a question, that's not an open-ended question, that's telling you something. Here's what I want you to do. Okay, when the bosses say that, or anybody says that, it has direct opinions and direct effect. So we do get a final approval for launch. There was dissenting opinion, but the overall opinion was go for launch from leadership. We launched. A few seconds after launch, you'll see that puff of smoke come out of the vehicle, and that's actually a failure of the solid rocket booster joint. Okay, so that's the start of the accident. Later on in the flight, you can actually see a flame protruding out of that, and now it's starting causing destruction of the vehicle. Bottom line is, the hardware was talking to us. We didn't listen well enough. This wasn't the first time we had O-ring damage on a vehicle. We had been seeing O-ring damage for several flights. When the boosters come back, we take them apart and look at the O-rings, and we saw microscopic erosion and abrasion on the O-rings. Okay, sometimes mini, sometimes larger. We start working the problem. We weren't callous. We didn't ignore it. We start working the problem. It started to become in family. It's kind of expected. And we start getting a little more confident of what that meant. So as the fix is being put in place, don't stop the flight rate, don't stop launching. We're going to launch and fix it while we're flying because we think we understand it better than we do. And in our business, we launch with issues all the time. We never have a perfectly clean vehicle, right? I don't think there's anything in the world. My car isn't perfectly clean, right? Nothing works. So you always have to risk and trade of what's working, what's not, and how you mitigate. It became in the category of we can fix it and fly. Okay, that was not a call, not a good cause. So the result of that was the loss of the Challenger 7 crew. We fast forward a number of years again, and we come to 2003. Okay, so we're moving along. We lost Challenger. We come online. We build, through President Reagan's direction, build Spatial Endeavor. Got 4 vehicles back, and we're flying fast and furious again because now we're starting to build the International Space Station. And with international agreements, there's a lot of pressure to get the nodes up there and get these things connected in time. There's an assembly sequence of all these pieces, a very choreographed situation. We have to get that. Columbia wasn't flying to space station. Columbia was a little too heavy at the time. Okay, so she couldn't lift the weight we needed to go there. So Columbia was doing free flying missions. After this flight, it was going to be retrofitted, but this time it couldn't. So it kept getting bumped. Station priority, get station assembly done, Columbia kept getting bumped back. Finally, you got to pay the piper at some point, so Columbia got put on the manifest, and it's time to go for launch. Okay? I'm going to share a quick video with you. This puts you back in launch day, back in 2003. I want you to introduce you to the crew, and then we'll come back and talk for a few minutes. We got the lights.
That?
Is we do lights?
Light? I don't know
Yeah,
anything
okay.
about lights.
My name is Rick Husband. I'm the commander of STS-107. Whenever we have these type of launch delays, I would say probably initially there might be a bit of a letdown or disappointment, but then we realize that we've been given a gift of more time to prepare. And we're going to be flying a 16-day science mission. We'll be dual shift, round-the-clock operations doing science in a Space Hab double research module for 16 days. We're really looking forward to it.
Rick talked about the delays a little bit, and I'd have to say from a rookie standpoint, the delays are probably good. I feel that in going through the training flow essentially a second time, a little bit less like a rookie and a little bit more like a veteran.
It's been 6.5 years since I came to NASA, so, and I really was hoping that I get to go sooner than this. I got the most excited today when we pulled out of crew quarters in the Astro van and I saw the flashing lights and the police cars and the helicopter following us, and I really felt like a little kid, and I remember getting down to the vehicle thinking I should really be, a lot more serious, a lot more paying attention to detail. But then I thought about how I had worked here for 2 years as an astronaut prior to getting assigned to this mission, and I really know the care and attention that everybody here puts in to getting the shuttle ready and launching it. And when I thought about that, it really let me relax and just kind of enjoy that excitement, and I'm sure it'll be the same and even more launch day.
And our astronauts coming out now as they're making their way to the astronaut van. Commander Rick Husband, payload specialist Ilan Ramon, pilot William McCool, and mission specialist Michael Anderson, David Brown, Laurel Clark, and Kalpana Chawla.
Go ahead. Okay, Rick, if there's ever a time to use the phrase, all good things come to people who wait, this is one time. And for you and your crew, best of luck on this mission, and from the many, many people who put this mission together, good luck and Godspeed.
Oh, we appreciate it, Mike. The Lord has blessed us with a beautiful day here, and we're ready to go.
10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine start. 5, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff at Space Shuttle Columbia with a multitude of national and international space research experiments.
Houston now controlling the flight of Columbia, the international research mission finally underway.
Roger, roll, Columbia.
What our plan is on the flight to try and capture each of the crew members in progress of doing some of their jobs on orbit with some narration.
Now here we have the red shift and the blue shift all on the middeck during our handover before the blue shift goes off duty and the red shift starts their day. And what we do is we try and pass on what we've learned from the previous shift and what the status of the various payloads is.
And of course, we're getting ready to go home, so we're doing exercise and even doing push-ups in order to be ready to feel good when we get back to Earth. Push-ups seem a little bit easier here for some reason.
Houston.
Yeah, Rick, I guess you've been wondering, but you are go for the deorbit burn. We are going to continue to assess which runway end we prefer, but for now we are happy with the weather at KSC. You are go for the burn.
Houston, here comes SSME high repress.
And we're ready, Willie, no deltas.
Copy, no deltas.
So we're going to leave visors down now.
Hello, I'm just saying, just check your suit.
Banking to the right now, a steep bank of 60 degrees and approaching the west coast of the United States. Columbia speed 16,620 miles per hour.
Columbia, Houston, comm check. Columbia, Houston, comm check. Columbia, Houston, UHF, comm check. Columbia, Houston, UHF, comm check.
So as you can see, that was a very bad day for us. Very, very bad day. A lot of lessons came out of Columbia. We're going to talk about those as well. But the end result was we lost our crew. Columbia was the vehicle I worked on, and I can tell you, immediately we all thought of what we did wrong. We all took it very personal. What paper did I sign that wasn't right? What did I miss? Thousands of people felt the same exact way. Something I hope never anybody ever has to feel in this audience or anywhere else. But that personal connection to your hardware and your crew is absolutely essential to do that. Columbia, talk about the mission a little bit. It was February 1st, 2003, we lost her. It was a loss of the vehicle and the crew. We'll talk a little bit about, we're going to start out telling you what happened, then we're going to back up a little bit of how we missed it. It was actually a piece of foam that came off the external tank and hit the left-hand wing of the vehicle, causing a breach in the wing, and that was the thermal protection system. So as you can see, up on the external tank, that orange tank, of course it's got liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen inside. It's minus 297 and 423 below zero. You have to insulate it, right? So it's insulated in foam. That's a design we couldn't get around. In Florida, we'd have sheets of ice on the vehicle if we didn't insulate the vehicle. So the foam was a design that we could not change in many ways. We had to deal with foam. We had to deal with the insulation of the tank. So we're kind of constrained to that over the number of years. In this case, a piece of foam in this area was in a dangerous location because you have the leading edge of the wing. Leading edge of the wing is very thin, it's strong in some ways, but it's also thin with a reinforced carbon-carbon. We'll talk more about that. I want to start off showing you what the launch team saw and the ground team after the accident happened, after the launch happened. This is actually enhanced video. Okay, the original video was even grainier than this. So I want to show you the good stuff to see if you could tell if there's any damage on the vehicle. Okay, because if you start off with bad data or not complete data, you can run in the wrong direction. So this is what the team saw after the video was enhanced. Let me know if you can see what happened to the vehicle or if it's a concern. You can see the foam being liberated by the bipod area, we call it, where the orbiter connects to the external tank, coming down and seemingly striking the left wing of the vehicle. The earlier footage of this did not even show that strike. Okay? There's lots of lessons learned in that. We have cameras all over the launch pad. All right? And again, we go back to the thing, sometimes you waive requirements, sometimes you waive things because things aren't working. Of all the cameras we waived, right, one of the best cameras was on this angle of the vehicle. Murphy's Law is alive and well, and it'll get you if it can. Okay, we didn't have the best camera angle for the video. We also didn't have this other particular camera focused 100%. Okay? Human error was introduced in the system. Things happen sometimes. Okay? So a combination of is we had a gray set of data, and that starts our conversation of not having the crisp, clear data that we needed of what happened. Okay? So that goes into vehicle was hit, caused damage, we lost the vehicle. Now we're in the investigation mode. Okay, so what we talked about before, Presidential Commission has started up. Tell us what happened to Columbia, what happened to the crew, how do we fix it, how do we get ready to fly again, what's the recommendations? So a board was enabled to go do that. They helped us with that. First thing, before that, okay, came clear after the accident, but before that, before the board was even institutionalized, that same day, leadership says, get me an expert. What just happened? Find me somebody smart in that system. I want to understand what's going to happen. Okay? Now, remind you, they're saying this just after the launch when the strike was noticed, but before the accident. 16 days before we lost Columbia. Okay? Because it was 82 seconds on ascent is when the piece of foam came off. We saw that same day on camera review. Bring me an expert, right? Because we all like experts. It's important to have. But I'm going to share some stories of how sometimes you got to be very careful how you use expert opinions. Okay? Again, the human nature comes into this. I'm going to work you through the acronyms. So here's basically what happened in a very small part. Here's the effect of what that opinion was. Our thermal protection system expert, that team, upon reviewing what happened and their knowledge of the system, said that it is very unlikely that if foam came off, we couldn't tell where it hit or exactly even if it did hit. But if it did, it's extremely unlikely to cause damage to the wing of the vehicle. The leading edge, the most sensitive, critical part, it's very, very unlikely for it to damage that part of the wing. We're not basing that 100% on test data because we didn't have test data for every single case of every single angle, amounts of foam, and speeds and velocities. But based on years of flight history and handling the materials and what we did have, using extrapolation and everything else, we strongly believe it's not going to be a safety of flight risk for that. Okay? That opinion set a lot of things in motion. Okay? That set, when you went to the mission management team, that set an opinion in their heads. The worst thing we're worried about, we don't need to be as worried about that. Okay? So the leading edge of the wing is probably going to be okay. Now we've got to think of more of the underbelly of the ship, where all the black tiles are. So we start looking towards thermal protection system on a tile level, start working tile models, looking at that. Drove us in a different direction of what our concern was. The debris assessment team, who was actually tasked to go look at this and do analysis, a couple of problems. The way the structure was set up, they didn't have strong direct influence back into the mission management team. Okay, they were almost a tiger team that went off and looked at something was going on. So they couldn't, these folks had good connection with them, but the debris assessment folks couldn't feed back into them. So that the opinion got stronger and stronger over time. So therefore, it reinforced the opinion. Lots of things about experts, right? Lots of things to think about experts and expert opinions. They're important, but expert opinions are just what they're called. They're opinions. They're not written in stone. They're not in a tablet somewhere on a hill. They're opinions. And nothing is ever bad about challenging in a respectful, healthy way what an opinion is. We don't like to do that as people, right? And we're going to mention a lot of ways about human factors in this. We don't like to challenge somebody that we perceive as smarter than us or more knowledgeable about us. We just don't, right? But sometimes it's healthy to do that. Ask that second or third question. Lots of things can happen. There's also a bias that's implied and kind of gets into our human nature and our systems and our culture, that we also want to kind of pick people that we want to kind of get an answer that we like, right? If somebody's going to tend to more agree with what you're thinking, you're going to bias and lean towards those folks. We rarely go get somebody's opinion that we really don't agree with, right? We want to kind of counter that opinion or challenge that opinion. That's just human nature. So it's always good to be vigilant against that happening. Also, you can get wrong expertise if you get the wrong people involved in that, right? Again, we were looking at the wrong systems. That was not good. People want to please. Again, innate human nature. This goes back thousands of years. You want to give the right answer. You want to do the best you can. You want to make things positive. Okay, human instincts. You can bend and twist things, even small wordings, right? Looking back to Challenger when somebody said, take off your engineering hat. You're implying things, right? You didn't say, launch it, I don't care if it's safe or not. You said something else. You're getting your opinion across in a different way. Again, we showed how to anchor opinions of folks. It can downplay further information. And I'm going to show you that in a second. We didn't come up with what the damage was for a few months. That opinion was so prevalent and strong, we truly believe in many ways it could not have been the foam. The foam couldn't cause the damage. That early onset and anchoring of opinion was very powerful and very hard to get off of that and look in different directions. We always look for ways to justify opinions. I always laugh and say if we could just fix I go to the diversity folks and tell them this, if we could just fix the DNA thing, we'd be in good shape, right? Figure all the human frailties that we have. Lord knows I have 1,000 issues myself, right? If we could just fix all this part about being a human, we'd have it made, but we can't, right? We have flaws, we have certain limitations, biases, everything else gets in our life. So all we can do is just plan for that. Realize our shortcomings, realize we can have these things, and be proactive. Try to build your processes and plans so you have ways around that, so it doesn't become a dominant part of the culture. Another part that we struggle with, right, about data, and you guys probably like data too, right? Well, I've been in, how many meetings have I been in, and bring me the data, where's the data, show me some data. They could be charts and graphs, pie charts, I don't care what it is, give me some data. Back up your opinion. We love data, okay? Gotta be careful with data. You can have good data and bad data. Sometimes it's good not to have answers. We don't like that. Engineers and scientists, we don't like not data. That's very uncomfortable for us. I know it's comfortable for me. Right? We want to find something, even if it's a little on the edgy part of it. We find these to be the 3 most powerful words. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I don't feel comfortable going to the boss's office and saying, sir, I don't know. Or ma'am, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. That's uncomfortable. Right? The launch director says, hey, are we scheduled to launch? No, I don't know. I can tell you it's probably the last launch you're going to work. Right? It doesn't go over very well. So we don't like that. We always try to give, we want to please, we want to give the answer to that. But that helps with uncertainty. I'll give you another example of that in human life, and hopefully you haven't been in the situation, maybe you have with yourself or a loved one. Right? You've been having pain in your side, you've been having pains for a while, and you don't do anything about it, and it gets worse and worse. And finally your loved one says, you know what, you're going to the doctor, this is enough. So they send you to the doctor, and you go to the doctor's office, and they put you through this battery of tests. And then you get to spend a couple of weeks of not sleeping because you're thinking of, oh my God, what's the test going to mean? Right? So now you're building up this moment. You finally go back to the doctor's office, you walk in, you're waiting for what the verdict is, and the doctor walks in and says, you know what, we reviewed your tests and everything, your blood work, and we're going to have to change your medicine, the small procedure, but you know what, you're going to be fine. Everything's going to be good, nothing to worry about, we've got it figured out. Well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to shake the doctor's hand, or if it's bad enough, I'm going to hug the guy, right? I'm probably going to go home, take him out to dinner for an expensive meal, and celebrate. I want to sleep like a baby that night, right, and be excited. And then back to work the next day, it's ops normal again, right, because we just put that behind us. On the other hand, I can tell you, if the doctor come in and says, Mike, if I were you, I wouldn't eat any green bananas, right? Things aren't looking too good. I'm going to be on the phone. I'm going to find every doctor that I can find online. I'm going to Google it, and I'm going to Firefox it. I'm going to Snapchat. Any other ways I can find a doctor. They don't have Yellow Pages anymore. I said that once to the younger group, and they didn't get it. They just, what's a Yellow Page? But I'm going to find every single possible way I can get a different opinion. I didn't like that. I'm going to challenge it. And again, I don't know about you guys, but I have never walked in the doctor's office after getting a yearly physical, and the doctor says, man, you're doing good. We'll see you next year. Are you sure about that? You want to run some more tests, more some blood work? Here's my arm. You know, got some more needles for me? You want to do some more things? I'm like, thanks, man. I'm out of there. That's human nature. We don't challenge what we like as much as we should. Okay? This was one of the biggest findings that came out of the CABE report, the Columbia Accident Investigation Board report. And I'll read it with you. We are convinced that the management practices overseeing the space shuttle program were as much a cause of the accident as the foam that struck the left wing. That was a kick in the gut, to be honest with you, right? We were focused on the technical, what happened, what was the foam issue, what was the temperatures, what was the pressures, what was the wind speed, how can we fix this, how can we do the aerodynamic models on this and aerosurface testing. The management, our decision making was just as bad as the accident itself. Okay, so we failed. Columbia didn't fail us. Challenger and Apollo 1 didn't fail us. We failed the vehicles. The vehicles were talking to us. We didn't listen. Okay, we're at fault for that. Something that maybe you guys have some familiarity with as well as we do this as well. Your personal warranty, right? You're putting your stamp of approval on it. People look to you. When you're considered an expert or you know something, people look up, right? When you walk in and say, Doc, how am I doing? Right? You're giving a lot of authority to that person. Tell me how I'm going to do. When they walk in and say, how's your radar system going? Or how's your optical system? Or is your launch vehicle ready? There's a lot of pressure on that. Okay? Sometimes it's good. I don't know. Not sure. There's some wiggle room. Okay? Leaving some openness. If they had come back and says, you know what? We're not really sure about that left-hand wing. You know, we never really ran the right models to give you the right data. We don't know if the crew's going to get back or not safely. Okay? I can guarantee you, knowing that team, we'd be up all night long, 24 hours a day, trying to figure it out. We didn't. Okay? And we paid for the crew's life for that. We didn't do the Apollo 13 thing, which we lost. An example of a very good lesson. And if you ever saw the movie, the Ron Howard movie, well, it's pretty accurate in a lot of ways. The problem happened. What did they do? Everybody jumped on the problem and devoured the problem. We're going to fix it. In Columbia's case, we weren't callous. We had a lot of meetings. We talked about it. It got ranked with another one of the issues that were happening during the flight. Hindsight is so easy to see things. We didn't see it at the time. Okay? We paid for that. Again, it comes down to each one of us to make that right decision. To reinforce what happened was a piece of foam did come off this area in the bipod ramp area. The vehicle was flying with a relative velocity about 540 miles per hour. Okay, and it did hit the left-hand part of the wing about panel 8 and 9. Again, that wasn't believed. Here's some comments that were made. Okay, this is investigation afterwards, comments folks made. I won't read them to you, but when you read them and you look at the accident reports from Challenger and the accident reports from Apollo 1 and the mishap report from Apollo 3, very, very similar. We got really good at learning things. Man, we were good after Apollo 1. We got really good after Challenger. There was a massive number of fixes put in place, tremendous number of great fixes. But over time, again, going down 95, right, so many miles, things start loosening up. So it isn't that we didn't learn it, we just forgot it and didn't remember it as well enough as we should have. Again, back to the testing of the foam. Look at the date on this, July. Accident happened February 1st. From February 1st, we believed it was very unlikely to be the foam. We had the best and the brightest working this problem. It took until this test to really understand that this was an issue. And as you're watching the film, I want you to listen to the audio at the very end and see if you notice something. This is after we bound the problem, we start understanding what the foam could have done. We got the angles right, the velocities, impact, basically all the physics of the problem figured out, replicated it on the ground, and here's the result.
We'll final 0, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
I guess it kind of happened, right? Everybody here was at the end of the video. There were gasps in the audience. These are high-level, talented folks. They were gasping. They could not believe this actually happened. This was our smoking gun that this could happen. Okay? That's a lot of months of investigation to even. So getting off of that anchored opinion took a long time. Proving it that this could happen took a long time. Okay? The consequences of this is Columbia today. Okay? Having lived with a vehicle my entire life, basically, as an adult, it's hard to see this. This was the result of the most complicated, beautiful spacecraft I've ever worked on in the world. It's in pieces. And the consequences of making bad decisions are huge. This could be a tank, this could be a warship, it could be a soldier in the field. It's all the same. I'll give a little quick thing here. It's kind of odd to talk about a Hindu parable, but you seem like the kind of cool crowd to kind of ride with this. Bear with me for a moment. Just to show us that lessons learned aren't new. This isn't like a new age kind of new thing that we do. This goes back thousands of years, right? We're not just inventing the wheel for the first time here. It goes back thousands of years. This whole parable goes back to, they got this mythical creature, supposedly comes into town. Everybody's blindfolded, and they tell the folks, tell us what this mythical creature is. So they start feeling different parts of it, right? So somebody grabs it and feels the ear and says, well, this thing you call an elephant is actually, it's like a fan, a giant fan. And then somebody feels the tail and says, Well, obviously, this elephant creature is like a rope. And then somebody else feels the trunk, and they said, well, this is obviously a giant snake, right? Well, the answer, cutting to the chase, is it's an elephant. Take off your blindfolds. It's so easy from different points of view to see something completely different, right? It's a simple explanation, but it's so easy in our lives to see something different. Understanding different people's points of view and seeing their perspective is critical. What I try to do as a test director is to get folks to understand each other, right? So we'd go, you were sitting up there doing launch countdown. Before that, we'd tell them, go in different systems. If your main engines, go sit with the LOX guys. Go sit with environmental control. Go sit with mechanisms. Okay, go sit with fuel cells. Understand each other. Look at their perspectives. Look at what's ops integration worried about. What's the integration team? Their focus is very different than a system guy or girl. All right, understand them. Understand what the techs are thinking, because techs are going to think different than senior leadership. Right? And then, by the way, you got operations and you got engineering. Right? What different languages are those? Completely different in many ways. Right? I mean, when I was an engineer, we got blamed for looking at data too much. And then when I was an ops guy, all we cared about was the clock. Right? I'm being kind of facetious, but perspectives from folks. And then safety was always thrown in the mix. Well, safety they're trying to slow us down. That's all they're trying to do. They don't understand. Right? So understanding each other and getting a knowledge of that and appreciating, well, what are the ops guys really worried about? Or what are the safety girls really worried about? Why is this important? Understanding each other. Do a slide on diversity. We're actually partnering with the headquarters Office of Diversity and Inclusion. It sounds kind of strange to talk diversity in engineering talks, but we're finding the connection is unbelievably parallel. Okay? And I'll share this with you. Hopefully this will apply to you guys as well. I can tell you, and think of Apollo 13 for a minute, diversity of opinion and thought is absolutely critical in our business. If you don't have different ways of looking at things and approaching and tackling problems, you're probably not going to get there. I mean, look at the Apollo 13 thing, right? That was almost a Gilligan's Island episode, if you think about it, right? You had a situation that happened. We weren't prepared for that on orbit. We didn't have extra carbon scrubbing systems on board the vehicle. We didn't have all that stuff. So what do? They ripped flight manuals apart, took duct tape and everything else. The guys and girls on the ground figured it out, right? They had all kinds of diverse ideas. How can we build something that wasn't even envisioned and make it work and save the crew and bring them home? That diversity of thought is critical. And also I can tell you as a test director, what scared me the most is when a problem came up, everybody was in unison on what to do about it. Okay, unless it was very simple, you got very nervous when you had everybody shaking their head yes. You want a dissenting opinion. As a matter of fact, after the accident, we had senior leaders that would have meetings, and in some of their meetings, they would say, nobody's going home until I hear something, I want a dissenting opinion. And we'll sit here through dinner, whatever you guys want to do. We'll be here until tomorrow morning if you want. I want to hear somebody challenge this opinion in some way to reinforce the idea that this could be something, there could be a different way of looking at this. So again, this isn't the diversity we all think about, but diversity of dissenting opinions is critical. Here's a few more. I'm going to spin through them pretty quick because I don't want to go through too much time for y'all. We've talked, again, communication. Communication is absolutely critical. The funny thing about that is we think we do it really well. Well, we really don't. We communicate a lot all day long, right? We talk and we email and we text and we Snapchat and we, Matt, what other ones? You're cooler than I am. What else we got? We do other things, right? We link, we do all these other things. So there's 10,000 different ways to communicate. So we think in a lot of ways we're communicating extremely effectively, but a lot of times we're not. Right? The old adage of communication is over 50% nonverbal. Right? And as technology moves, and I'm not bashing technology, we're going paperless too, and we're doing all that. But we're trying to share with our folks. Sometimes you pick up the phone. Sometimes you walk across the hall and you look somebody in the eye and you have that conversation with them, because you don't always get it across in an email. And I can give you dozens of examples on the accident report of where folks says, I didn't get the same intent out of that note they sent me. I thought it was an action or an informational email. I didn't realize it was an action-oriented email. I didn't realize you wanted me to do something with it. Okay? Follow-up is critical. Vigilance, that's one of the biggest things. So people ask us, well, how do you keep this message alive? It's hard, right? Again, going down 95, life gets in the way afterwards. The vigilance, that's why we're doing this brand new program. We are pushing it over and over again so it doesn't escape out of our systems. the personal warranties, the vigilance of doing something right, standing up and saying something when you have to, reinforcing that over and over again is absolutely critical for us. Normalization of deviance, that's NASA's fancy way of saying something that shouldn't be the way it is. It's hard to find. It seems simple, but it's not. One of the easiest cliches, right? The only constant in life is change. We've all heard that one. That's true. Every day, everything changes. I can imagine on the shop floor, every day is different than how you started out, right? It never goes according to plan. That's life. Nothing goes like that. So that's okay. There's some things that shouldn't be in there. I call them the little hitchhikers. They glob on and attach on to change, and they're bad change, like the O-rings, right? There's lots of things changing on the vehicle. O-ring should not have gotten through. Foam on the external tank. The tank was built, right? Flown at 81, flown for a lot of years. We got used to foam coming off. We had foam coming off on multiple flights. Almost every flight, we had foam on some degree coming off the external tank. We got so used to it, it became more of in-family condition. We didn't ignore it. We tried, we battled it. We found different things to work and mitigate it, but we battled it the entire time. It became somewhat expected. Another example for you. When the vehicles would come back home and go in the shuttle landing facility, we'd walk out to the vehicles and walk underneath and check everything out. When you look under the vehicles, you'd often see little damage marks on the tile. Right? This is foam tile with a glass coating, a ceramic coating on it. You'd see damage. I'll speak for myself. When I saw less damage on the vehicle, well, that's kind of strange. I wonder why there's less damage on this flight. This doesn't make any sense. Right? I usually see more damage. Our paradigm had started to shift over the years. We got conditioned to expect more damage. We didn't fluff it off. We looked at it, mitigated, but it was the normal had switched more to expecting more damage. That's very dangerous. We share that now with our new launch providers that are coming on the scene, all the commercial companies saying, hey, guess what? Your systems are going to change too. Be careful. Watch what's changing. And if you're flying your rockets over and over again, that's really great. But we humbly suggest that's not the same rocket you're flying every time. Right? Every time you're using some of the equipment you guys build is not going to behave the same way. Things age, things change. Be careful of what should be changing. I know my car doesn't look like it did when I drove it off the lot. It doesn't even come close to that. I wouldn't have bought it. Right? Some of it's normal, right? I didn't expect the paint to last this many years. So some things are normal, some things aren't. Knowing the difference is critical. Oh, by the way, when you get a bunch of new people on board, their normal is set that first day. When I saw the vehicle for the first time in the orbital processing facility, I wasn't here for Columbia's first launch. I never saw a vehicle brand new. I saw it kind of beat up from the effects of coming back home from outer space. That was my normal. So we're trying to encourage our workforce as they're coming online. Hey, guess what? You're going to be hiring people coming in, and their normal is going to be something very different than what yours is today. Number one, don't forget what that is for yourself. Right? Never forget what the initial conditions are. And number two, realize that you have to teach them what it should be and not what it may be at that time. Time is of the essence, right? These are all cliches, but these are important. We didn't use time very effectively, and I'll go a little quicker here for you. We didn't use time very effectively. We didn't jump on the problem as fast as we could. There were potential solutions that we would have ran the clock out if we didn't. We didn't follow the Apollo 13 method. Fix things fast. Observe the reality around you. The vehicle was talking, the hardware was talking. We did a really bad job of listening to it. Complacency kills. We had gotten so used to flying these vehicles 6 times a year, 8 times a year. Right? We had our mojo going. We're pumping out another one. We're launching another one. We're fixing it. Complacency sets in any system. We're talking into a lot of companies now that are very successful companies. We're not going in and talking to them, and they're not actually inviting us in because they think they're having major problems. It's because they're scared on the other side. They're concerned. They're being so successful that they're worried about complacency, right? That could be sometimes as dangerous as not having a good success record is being very successful, right? You start loosening up a little bit, right? The one hand comes off 10 and 2, and the shoulders start doing this. 2 ears, 1 mouth for a very good reason. It just goes back to the old adage. These are a lot of things your grandmother taught you, so I'm not reinventing the wheel here, but listening, not just hearing, but what is somebody really trying to tell me, right? We filter through so many biases in life of what somebody says. We filter through so many lenses. For example, remember the old thing we did in grade school, at least we did this, is teacher starts off and tells you something, whispers it to you, right? And then you pass it to the next person. It goes on down the line. You get to the end of the room. It could have been like Frank wants to paint the house, and it could be the last thing is grandma fell off the balcony, right? It's always crazy how things, be careful that really truly listen to what's happening. Relationship building. Again, it kind of gets our engineers squeamish when we talk about relationships. Ooh, engineers, relationships, it's weird. It's critical in our business, right? I can tell you, knowing the launch team, everybody that's on that floor, understanding them, knowing their quirks, them understanding my quirks. I can't tell you how many conversations I had on the nets when we're taking it offline to a different net and there's a pressure situation, just hearing somebody's tone of voice. Just knowing that person so well, how are they telling me this? What are they really saying to me? Those little things, if I didn't have that relationship with them, I could be missing it. You can say things very different in different ways. Understanding each other and building trust, right? If we don't have open relationships in the senior leadership and everybody in between, you're not going to talk well amongst yourselves. You're not going to have that respect or go say, you know what, boss, I think I made a mistake or I think we have a problem here, if you don't trust what the response is going to be back. Relationships. We talked about uncertainty, how important that is. Tools for success. This is the last one I'll mention to you. We didn't have all the tools for success, things we didn't even think about. After the accident, well, on orbit, they couldn't tell there was a problem. What did we do about that? We put sensors on all the wings. Sounds like a great fix, right? We brought entire camera systems up on orbit with us. So the folks on station could take pictures of it, and the orbiter crew can take pictures of the vehicle. Sounds like a good idea. We didn't have that before the accident. We had cameras on the external tank and the solid rocket boosters for real-time imagery. Didn't have that before. These were all great things. We didn't have tools for success, and we paid the price for it. Think of the things now before you have an accident or before it's too late to come up with a solution. I'm going to leave you with one last thing before we go to question and answer. I always end with this because this is the most important part. We talked about how and what and where and when, all these other conditions. But the most important thing we deal with is the why. Our business is the why of the 7 folks or however many crew members are going to get on board a rocket, and they're going to say, we trust you getting us back home to our family. Okay? That's who our customer is. And by the way, it's all the other people working around the pad. Because I was never lost on the fact that it wasn't just that customer, which was actually going to get on top of that nuclear bomb effectively and go for a ride, but it was the folks I had working at the launch pad. They were working maybe second shift, third shift, off shift. Maybe there's 3 people called in sick, so they got twice as much work to do. Maybe they're not feeling well, their kid's not feeling well, their mind's somewhere else, or it's a holiday. It's all those other people that we're concerned about of making sure they get home to their families as well. So again, it's the why. So I'll leave you with this. This was actually a song written by a Nashville songwriter. It was donated to the families and played live for them at the 10th memorial celebration ceremony for the crew families. So I want to share this with you.
Can we find what's been lost? Retrace steps, find out the cause. Over and over, what went wrong? Just remember, stand tall, be strong. When you're just 16 minutes from home, know with us you are never alone. We will always remember the ones lost just 16 minutes from home. From home. Taking steps into the unknown, but all that we've learned is what they have shown. Maybe the stars will guide them home, and the path forever us down the road. At last you are truly home. When you're just 16 minutes from home, no, with us you are never alone. And we will always remember the ones lost just when you're just 16 minutes from home. No, with us you are never alone. We will always remember the ones lost just 16 minutes from you are home. At last you are truly home.
So that's our why. So what do we do going forward? This new program is going to be our way to try to reignite those lessons learned. We're actually doing it in innovative ways. We're coming out with the invitation of some wonderful corporations coming out and speaking and sharing these lessons learned so we can help in any way we can. We're taking folks to the Columbia Preservation Room and actually seeing the artifacts of Columbia to reinforce the message strongly. I'm actually taking Columbia on a space shuttle national tour starting this fall and going around the entire country, taking Columbia around to reinforce that message to all of our centers and workforces, vendors, suppliers, and everybody in between. We work with book authors on book projects, work on TV projects and movie projects. We've got a couple under the way. So we're trying to be very innovative, to be very effective, to find a way to take this message and bring it home to a new generation of folks, and then remind us older folks exactly what we should be doing. So that's what's in our heart. That's what we do. I want to say up front, before we go to Q&A, again, spending time with what you guys do today, it's unbelievably impressive to watch what you all do. Every time I see a soldier in the field or on TV or something happening, my heart's there with them. And knowing you have folks like you that got their back, that do a great job of making sure they have the right weapons and technology to do their job right, to not only be safe, but to keep me free, that means a lot. So I want to say thank you very much for what you do. It's not only impressive, but it's unbelievably important. So we appreciate that. And we can go into question and answer if you'd like. Yep. Okay, it's a little blinding, so I'm going to point in some general direction.
How has this mission changed with all of the commercial aspects going on in today's world compared to when these matters happened?
Great question. The question was, how have things changed today in this regard in relation to all the commercial activity happening? Very timely, interesting question. Kennedy Space Center has truly evolved into a multi-user spaceport. It is amazing. It used to be Apollo program, shuttle program, us. Now we're well over 50% is commercial activity out there, and it's moving faster and faster in that way. It's an interesting relationship between us and them because they're private corporations with boards, right, and profit motives. We're not. We're in a different model. So we're spending a lot of time getting to know each other. There's lots of things they bring to the table that are really inventive and very imaginative and very exciting, so we're learning from them. So we're trying to realize how we can move faster and quicker and do different things, but we're also trying to say, hey, here's also 60 years of history. So what we're doing is we're partnering with them, we're integrating with them as much as we can. We understand there's corporate information we can't share, and there's limits and lines between competition, but we're doing as much as we can. We're inviting ourselves and saying, hey, we're here to help you. Here's how we can share a lot of flight history so you don't have to make the same mistakes that we did. You can learn from that. So we're integrating ourselves. We have a commercial crew office that does that, a lot of that. We invite all of the commercial teams to come over to the Columbia Preservation Room. I'm actually in the process now of getting all the SpaceX folks through. So we're spending a lot of time working with hundreds of people coming through and talking to them, sharing the history. We also go out and go to their corporations, and I go out and I speak around the country to their vendors and suppliers too. So we're trying to ingrain ourselves as much as we can, understanding the certain limitations that we have, and it's a good partnership to go do that. Next question? Yes, sir.
If they had identified the damage
And you mentioned if they identified the damage earlier, is there anything we could have done? That's a tough question. We looked after the accident and studied that a lot. There's a lot of theories on the physics level, aerothermal level. Could you have done something with the wing? Could you have changed reentry profiles? Could you have taken stress or heating off that wing? Nothing conclusive ever came of any of that. We don't carry, the vehicle had 44 of those reinforced carbon-carbon panels. We don't carry a flight set a spare. We wouldn't have enough room to carry a payload. So we didn't have easy fixes, but there was some imaginative ones. Nothing panned out. The one thing I can tell you with some level of accuracy of what we did do, this is after the accident. The launch director came to us and said, hey, can you look at the countdown charts for Atlantis? Atlantis was scheduled to fly after Columbia. Could you have possibly gotten Atlantis ready to go and launched in time to do a rescue flight? So we took the countdown charts and we scrubbed them like crazy, took all the fat possibly out of those, and looked at them. And the bottom line was, it's a hard question to answer. On paper, it works. On paper, you could have gotten Atlantis to the pad in time. You could have gotten up there and potentially have gotten the crew in time. It's all potential, right? It assumes a lot of things. It assumes you're going to do something unexpected, it's going to work. You assume that Mother Nature is going to be cooperative, that you can launch the vehicle. You're going to assume all the hardware is going to be really friendly to you, and you're going to march up through that process without a lot of problems on the vehicle. Very likely a White House presidential decision to commit another vehicle and a crew to something you just don't know what happened days before. So that's a presidential probably decision. So a lot of gates you've got to cross through. I think the biggest lesson that came out of that is we never asked that question before. We never tried. That's the part that kicks me right in the stomach, to be honest with you. We never tried. You know, if you got on the football field and at least you tried to the last second, we didn't do that. We didn't do the Apollo 13 model. Not that we didn't do anything. We had meetings, we had discussions, we had limited testing, we did a lot, but we never got to that point. Okay, so we tell folks, time is of the essence, right? Would it have worked or not? I don't know. I can tell you from working with this crew for my entire career, and you probably can say that amongst yourselves too, there's nothing that team can't do. I've seen them pull more rabbits out of hats. I mean, doing amazing things that I just never dreamed possible. Fixes that you can't even imagine. I know I would have worked, and the team would have worked 8 hours a day, 25 hours, 25 hours a day, 8 days a week to get the solution, right? Sleeping and eating wouldn't have been required. We would have tried everything we could to get there. We never got off and started the game for that, so. Next question? Yes?
They spent 16 days in space.
16 days, yes.
And they never once went outside the capsule, looked around, assessed the damage, see what happened.
Okay. And the gentleman was asking, for 16 days, did anybody go outside and look at something or do anything on orbit? So the problem was noticed on ascent, on post-ascent data review. The problem was mentioned to the crew as an issue. It wasn't raised to an IFA, we call it inflated anomaly status, but it was an issue that they were mentioned to. The crew was told, we're going to go off and look at it. As we do multiple other things, right? The vehicle's got other issues. It's never going to be perfect. So the crew gets a menu of different things that we're looking at. And we'll get back to you once the crew and the ground team takes a look at it. On this vehicle, right, again, Murphy's Law is going to get you. This was a free-flying mission. So after missions, you saw us dock with the space station. Well, we weren't in the same orbital plane as the space station. Okay, so we weren't going to the space station, so the space station folks couldn't take pictures for us or see it. We didn't have a robotic arm on this flight. Okay, we just didn't need it for the science we were flying. Okay, we had no extra vehicle activity, EVA, scheduled for the flight. Okay, so we had no planning and parts scheduled to go do that. So that being said, when people came up with possible options of let's go send a crew member outside, you start weighing risk. That's important to do, right? You're weighing risk. One of the pushbacks, in a good way, of risk in this particular situation was, well, if I go put somebody outside the ship, I'm going to now put this crew member at risk. Every time you go outside the orbiter, it's a risky maneuver. So I'm going to put somebody outside, put them at risk. By the way, they're not trained for this particular procedure, so there's risk inducement. By the way, I've got no arm. I've got no hard tether on them. Okay, other vehicles and other flights, we've got a hard tether. We anchor to the folks to the arm and we move them around. So you're a free floater. So I'm going to send somebody over the side of the ship on a loose cable tether, and all they've got to do is accidentally bump up against the side of the ship, which is just covered with over 30,000 tiles, and you're definitely not going to come home. So I could be possibly introducing great risk to the vehicle by just sending somebody to go on a quote-unquote potential wild goose chase to look at something. By the way, I can't see any damage. I don't have the right cameras and imagery to tell me that I've got damage to the vehicle. So I've got no proof there's a problem. So answer comes back is do something about what? Right? I've got no proof there's a problem. I've got options that got tremendous amount of risk inducement to them, not to mention mission risk, because once I tell the crew to stop doing the science, the reason to fly, and to go figure out this new procedure, I've killed the reason for the flight. All that science we've spent years getting ready for, you've canceled the purpose of the mission. Okay, so there's mission risk as well on a potential thing that I can't prove that happened. Okay, I'm not saying it was right or wrong, and I never say Monday morning quarterbacking because that's never fair. Never say what's right or wrong. It just shows you the power of how a decision, you can see it from two different points of view, and it can be diametrically opposed, and both seem unbelievably good to take, right? Because we didn't have the tools, we didn't have all that stuff. It's hard. Decisions are hard to make. We tell the young folks and the new folks when they come in, you know, you're getting paid good bucks because you're sharp and this is hard. You know, you wouldn't be here if this was easy. It is hard to do. You know, launching a vehicle, honestly, that's not the super hardest thing to do. It's when things go wrong and everything stops and you got to figure out how you're going to either save the crew or the vehicle or how you're going to get up when it's not working right. The computers can do the rest, right? You get the ground launch sequencer, it does most of the stuff for you. That's the easy stuff. That's not the part. So again, it goes into how do you identify it? It goes back to Apollo 1, failure imagination. We couldn't imagine that could have been a cause, right? Because the experts are telling us not only they can't see damage, but the experts are saying it's very, very unlikely you could even cause damage. So again, this all wraps together and it becomes hard. We wish we had. Next question. Yes, sir.
Back in the challenge you were saying, management speak, has there been any kind of change in how you do reviews like that, getting ready to launch and all that?
And the question was, since Challenger, were there any change of reviews? There were a lot of changes, a lot of cultural, organizational changes, a lot of parallel paths put in processes. So it wasn't a singular point through a certain organization. You had multiple pathways to get information across. A lot of fixes for communication. You know, when you talk to the launch director for Challenger, he wasn't aware of a lot of this discussion the night before launch, right? Because Kennedy Space Center launches the rocket. In this case, Marshall and other organizations were in charge of the engineering behind it, right? So he reports back, he wasn't familiar with a lot of the discussions before launch going on. So there were a lot of stovepiping of data. We know that can be very dangerous. So we broke a lot of those stovepipes down. So people could get the information. The launch director, for example, could get reports, and if there was things being worked, they could weigh into the conversation and say, hey, wait a second, I've got some of the vote here too. So we did a lot of that. But that even being, and there's lots more, but that even being said, you fast forward a number of years to Columbia, right, and we had very similar things happening again. And I'll give you an example of that. The Intercenter Photo Working Group and the imagery folks that wanted to understand, was there damage on the vehicle, okay? They were asking for other assets to go look at pictures and get pictures. And we know where there's things up in there that can take nice pictures for us, right? They wanted to get more data. There was either a real or perceived, we're not going to go take a look. There's no need to go take a look. Okay? So we got better, but in some ways we forgot again and didn't get so good. Those folks reported back they didn't either feel comfortable going above and beyond those folks or finding other parallel paths. So without saying what's right or wrong, I say, well, what did we learn from that, right? Lessons learned comes right back down to lessons learned. Well, communication, relationship building. Get so good right now of being a communicator that you know how to communicate a problem. Because I'm going to humbly suggest, I'm not going to point any finger here, but I can tell you our senior leadership and our technician levels, they know a lot of different things, right? What the techs know, the senior leaders probably don't know. What the senior leaders know, the techs don't know. It's not their job. So how do you communicate so effectively that you can take a problem that you're talking ones and zeros and this wire and this little circuit board, and that senior leader might not even have an idea that even exists in the world? How do you communicate so effectively that that person can make a good decision based on what you're telling them? That's hard to do, right? But communication boils down to that, right? And also, how do you build the relationships. How do you work around difficult people? And by the way, we could be difficult too, right? We all could be difficult ourselves. So how do you work around that? That's hard. How do you build a relationship? So if I want to go to somebody, I don't want to go to my boss's boss and say, guess what, you're wrong. You know, that's, unless somebody really enjoys that, I don't know. I've never met that person yet. It sure isn't me, right? It's scary to walk in that office when you go to the top elevator and you walk out there in the hallway and it's like, ooh, you know, rarefied air up there. And it's scared to go do that because you know you're going to get questions and all that. But if you have relationships built with the people you work with and you build some teamwork so you can start to build, coalesce some camaraderie and you can start building a consensus of opinion, well, now you're safety in numbers. It's the human nature thing again, right? Nobody ran up to the dinosaur and hit him with a sword. It probably had some people working with him, right? It's just the human nature DNA part. So again, those things, we tell our folks, get ready for those things. I'll mention one more quick last thing on that question. Had a wonderful experience a couple of months ago. Everybody heard of the Sully plane, the plane that crashed in the Hudson? I had the honor a few months ago to take actually the last gentleman off the plane through the Columbia room and talk to him. Fascinating gentleman. And he made a comment. He says, you know what, Mike? He goes, what really struck him was, he goes, I was just going for a work meeting. I said goodbye to my wife, hopping on the plane out of New York City, and I'm going for a ride. I got a business meeting. All my head was, I got the meeting, what am I going to say, what am I going to do? He had all his agenda, what he has to do that day. He goes, I had no idea that a few minutes later I'd be sitting in the middle of the Hudson River trying to save my life and the life of other people. Never in a million years. So his message back was, you never know when your moment is. Right? There's never that, hey, guess what, tomorrow is, you're going to shine tomorrow, buddy. Tomorrow's the day. You don't know. You don't even drive home today. Could be that day. You don't know when that moment is. So his message back, which I think is powerful to share, is be ready for that moment. Right? And he says, thankfully, he felt he was ready for that moment, to have enough strength to help to be the last person on that plane to get everybody else off the plane when he was ready for that plane to sink under the water. He felt he was ready for that moment, for whatever his life geared him for that. So we train our folks, communicate well, build the relationships, get really good at that stuff. If you're going to be a Snapchatter, be good at it. Right? Whatever it is, be good at it. So when your moment comes up, man, you're on the job and ready to go. Is there a question in the back, Saul?
Yeah, my question is, do you currently use the, I'm right here, sorry.
Oh,
do you currently use the ceramic coated foam on any other project?
Can you say one more time?
Do you use the ceramic covered foam on any other current project?
Yes, we do. Actually, we're building the Orion spacecraft. So the Orion spacecraft is the follow-on. It's a capsule that's going to be launched to take crew to the moon. So that's going to use the ceramic tiles, much the same. We've made a lot of enhancements and changes to those tiles. They're much more robust than they were from that. So we actually learned a good lesson, understand your technology and learn it. Actually, the rest of the shuttle program, we did stuff with tiles to experiment with different tiles to get them more robust and stronger to understand that. So we're using that. Another company that's flying a very small reusable plane is using tile and thermal protection, but it's not the same type of, exact same tile as shuttle used, more robust and stronger for that.
I've got a question about your lessons learned program.
Sure.
And I've been involved in several of them in the past, but it's very easy to capture reams and reams of data. And it's difficult to take that amount of data, distill it down to a level that's useful, and develop a process around it such that it's incorporated in your every initiative and new project. Do you have any recommendations?
Oh, look at the time. Look at the, oh my God, oh jeez. I don't know, it's Thursday, got happy or something. Help me out here, but please. There's a lot of answers to that, I think you have to make it relevant, you have to make it alive. You can't just make it paper and process, you know? Because you're getting at the processes of how you do things. You know, a lot of the feedback after the accident was, well, the board should have seen this, or look at the flow chart. You know, a lot of overemphasis on the process. And it's also the people part of it. We kept missing the people part, because if it has to go through this, and we got some beautiful flow charts, I'll show you if you ever want to see them. But if it's not, if you don't have the checks and balances put in there, and the little gates that have little, you know, get out of jail cards in there to move around things, it's not going to work. So I say, you know, look at your process and plans, re-scrub them, look at them 10 different ways. You know, reimagine different ways that you could teach them where they don't work, or possible ways they couldn't work. Not knowing your specific plans is a hard question to answer and how you work stuff. But having parallel paths is unbelievably important. So many folks in the accident reports, when you read through them, felt that they had a certain path to go and they couldn't go and deviate around it. You couldn't work around the mission management team. You couldn't work around this particular group. Everything was dead end. You had to follow certain directions. Empowering people to go do that. Empowering people is incredible. And there's books written in Challenger, multiple books written about people not felt they were empowered or couldn't say something or weren't heard. Listening and walking the walk is critical. And then the personal responsibility. Yes, there's a plan and procedure, but that's not also your get out of jail card either. Just because you follow the procedure doesn't mean there's less of a personal warranty on what happened. Sometimes you got to be the one that says, hey, time out, it's enough. This isn't going right. This reminds me of something. And by the way, that's hard to do, right? And then having the management and the leadership to say, we got your back. That sends strong messages. For example, we had launch countdown. It was Columbia's flight, multiple flights before that. And I remember I was in the integration council at the time. We had a HAZ gas system, we called it. They were mounting all the hazardous gas on the vehicle. And just before we started to light the main engines, this guy screams out, cut off. Right? That gets your attention. That room is like a pin drop, right? That's like the old commercial, pin drop. You could hear a pin drop. He screams, cut off, and they cut the vehicle off with milliseconds before they lit the main engines. Once you light the engines, that's a very dangerous environment, right? And through the investigation, and we also, of course, scrubbed launch for that day, it turns out that was a false reading. The vehicle was perfectly fine, could have launched that day, no problem at all. Okay, and everybody took a deep breath going, oh, hate to be in his shoes. And everybody, everybody's going, oh, what's going to happen? One of the most amazing things happened is that the launch director and the senior leadership backed him up 110%. You saw what you saw, you made your call, we entrust you to make that call. You made the call, we got your back, excellent call. Okay? There wasn't any equivocation. Well, you could have done this, it wasn't even wiggle room, it was black and white. We got your back, that's what we empower you to go do. So building that culture is important for everyone to be able to say, hey, this isn't right, this procedure and plan isn't right. Okay? Even if it makes a delay or hits the consequences of money and budget, I know there's things, right? But you still, it has to be real. If people don't feel it, they don't feel strong to stand up. It's human nature. If it isn't safe, we're not going to go do it. It's easy to see this saying, man, I would have said no go. Well, of course we would have. The hard part is saying no go before it actually happened, right? Does that help a little bit? It's, okay. Yes, sir. Yeah.
More fundamental.
Okay.
I really love your slide, everything you're saying about human nature, difficulty seeing things. This is not a new idea, but I'm curious if NASA's ever explored, or is exploring, the whole idea that, I know in my personal life, people, I make better decisions when I sit quietly and meditate.
Okay.
I keep quiet in my mind. Because, I heard you say you can't solve a problem with the same mindset you created.
Right.
Companies were exploring this in the 70s to see people actually took time out to sit quietly. You're going to help employees become more effectively make better decisions. NASA looking into this at all?
Okay, wow. I thought the last one was tough. This is even tougher. Man, you guys are good. I don't know if everybody heard that up, but are we looking at very innovative different ways to have people be able to calm, relax, and kind of approach things from different perspectives, maybe being quiet and stuff like that. In many ways, yes. Human factors, we're really ramping up the approach of human factors. I think one thing that's very interesting from our perspective is we have a lot of folks come through the Kennedy Space Center. We have a lot of these interesting high-tech companies and very innovative folks. And when you look at organizations out there, some of them are having people take naps, right? Some people are working with Legos, right? Stuff like they're paying you to play with Legos. A friend of mine did that. Her company they brought Tinker Toys in. I'm like, oh my God, are they hiring? I got launch countdown charts. I got to get that off tomorrow. I'm working until midnight. Legos, man, I'm there. Count me in. But there's a lot of innovative things companies are doing. I'm not saying Legos is the way to go, but there's a lot of innovative ways to look at things. I know when people have time to look at the problem from different perspectives, it helps. That diversity of opinion is so critical. We're pushing that diversity of opinion strongly. So some people, they're high pressure, they're type A, right? You just want to charge the hill and go at it. Well, there's other people that are not. right? Some people are the more quiet, reserved, relaxed. I just need some time to I don't need to be in a boardroom and start throwing erasers around. I want to sit underneath a tree, have my lunch, and just kind of think about this problem. I can tell you from different points of view, they all work. So we're trying, and we're pushing diversity huge at NASA, and it's not just the traditional, which is important, you know, sex, race, sexual orientation, that type of diversity, and that's very important stuff, but we're pushing the diversity of opinions, the diversity of different people, how they approach problems, because we're finding the best solutions when we realize that maybe you need to meditate or relax a little bit, right, or focus on the problem, and maybe you're the type that just runs in there and just starts scribbling on the blackboard and figuring things out. So yes, bottom line of that long answer, yes, we're doing that. And we're trying to make our displays and human factor friendly as well, how people interpret data and how we're giving data to people. It isn't just ones and zeros. We're trying to be innovative on that too. More questions? Yes?
How is NASA going to certify themselves to resume human spaceflight? You have processes and requirements and a series of tests you have to go through to certify a launch system for human spaceflight. What is NASA going to do about its organization? How do you certify your organization and convince yourselves and the rest of us that you're competent to resume human spaceflight?
Great point. Something we're working on very strongly. We haven't flown people in space since 2011, actually July 2011, so it's 8 years, right? It's been a long time. It's interesting, and I'll mention this in two different directions. We've got two parallel paths for human spaceflight. We got the NASA side of the house that's launching our new generation of a NASA rocket with Orion on top of it, and then we got the commercial entity, right? So this makes it even more complicated. So how do we do both? So on the NASA side of the house, we have our NASA, 100% NASA insight, NASA oversight, NASA involvement. We kind of know how we do things from shuttle, enhancing some of that. So we bounce that off. We have certificates of flight readiness. We go through certain boards and procedures, making sure the system's ready, the people are ready. We have a very established process for that. And we feel confident. The challenge and the opportunity we're working now is with the commercial providers, because we don't own those rockets. We're partnering. Sometimes we're buying services. The service could be a satellite, it could be a person. And we don't have 100% insight into them because some of it's proprietary and other things. So we're trying to find that happy balance of how do we get enough insight that we're comfortable, but also respect the lines of a private organization that's for profit and everything else. So we have, as I mentioned before, commercial crew offices ingrained with them, looking at their certification of flight readiness, looking at their launch commit criteria, looking at all the qualifications before they can say go, looking at their problem resolutions. You know, some of the rocket providers of the last year or two have had issues. So we invite ourselves in as much as we can to try to, one, help solve the problem, but two, to get insight. Are they doing the right things? Are they doing things safely? It's an interesting connection because when it comes to commercial providers, the FAA is tremendously involved. When we launched shuttle, we didn't work with the FAA except for the obvious with public safety. Now we're working with the FAA much closer. And the FAA is strongly involved in issuing launch licenses to providers for people and for payload. Okay? If NASA flies a payload on, if it's our astronaut or our payload, we also have different levels of involvement and in depth we get. So it's a hard answer to answer you, but it changes for every single mission and every single aspect of it. The hard part we're facing, and I'll mention this really quick, is we got brand new rockets coming online and brand new people. So how do you train those people as well to be certified for launch? When I came on board, it was a lot of OJT. Basically, here's your job, there's an orbiter, go figure it out, right? And they didn't turn you loose with a wrench, but you went on there with an experienced person and said, all right, we're going to do this testing this day, and you work the testing. And then the next flow, you work the testing, Well, we don't have any rocket to work on. So that's a huge challenge for us. And as an old sim team lead, they've asked our old sim team guys, well, how would you train the next generation when you don't have hardware to work on? That's hard for us, right? The rockets are being designed right now. That's a huge challenge for us. You only can sim so much without being real. So we're trying to do a balance of that, trying to teach the lessons. We're trying to do some limited simulation. We're trying to give a lot of tribal knowledge that we can squeeze out of the system and provide to them. We're trying to look at the checks and balances for what was healthy in the past for certification of flight readiness that we're certified to go. We're trying to encourage the dissenting opinions if we're not ready to go. And then work that partnership with commercial. Next question. I can just about see the last row, so I can't tell. If that is the last question, I want to say up front really quick, I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to come here. We're taking this program around to different corporations and countries, and in other countries too, I should say. But taking this message because we feel so strong that we want to help everybody we can. We want to share our knowledge, the good and the bad, with everyone. So I hope some of it is applicable to what you all do. If we can ever help in any other ways, we're here to do that. That's what we do at NASA. We try to share everything we can, the good and the bad, so you guys can be more successful. And I'll leave this with, again, thank you for what you do on a daily basis. Matt, the tour, and Kimberly, everyone. Fascinating what you do. And now when I watch TV and I watch a missile being shot, or I watch somebody in the field using special optical devices to keep themselves alive, I'm going to have a little better appreciation for why they're coming home and why we're successful on the battlefield. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks. I want to have a special shout out for Michelle Wilson and Kimberly Bruce, who suggested that we invite Mike to come out and give this presentation. They saw it, I guess, at a GuideDep event a couple of years ago, and thought it was good, suggested it. Actually, the colonel that started the Challenger program inside of our own organization, and I hope everyone agrees this is time well spent, and we certainly wish the best for NASA going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
We're going to open these curtains here, and there's some refreshments and some snacks. So please help yourselves, everybody, and then have a good weekend. Thank you, everybody.
Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5.